What is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and today, bring you guys a little bit more of a tier list video. I've made a lot of these in the past, talking about what are the best Colosseums, the best arena, the best, well, I'm not sure about arena, but we're going to be touching upon that in this video today. Best raid bosses, best treasure map character. These particular videos that I've made in the past, like I think they'd been updated 8 months ago or something like that, 7 months ago. It's been a long time, so we're going to, re-establish these tier lists over the next couple of days. As these videos have been releasing, I'm actually away for this weekend, so I've got these videos recorded for you guys to just kind of re-update these specific tier lists, which is a good idea. Okay, so let's go ahead and start things off. Now I'm over here on OPTC-tierlist.com, enabling us to actually do this. Now it's kind of interesting because on the Colosseum listing they don't actually have the arena characters, but they do have a separate tier list for the arena characters, and of course there are not that many, but we're going to be using the same grading scale as to where I would place them. But I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Now there are a lot of these old school Colosseum characters that are just straight up bad. I'm going to be skipping over a lot of these. I want to try and get this done as soon as we possibly can, but a lot of these are just outright terrible. Like, you just do not need to worry about it. This guy actually is usable in some sense. He does health reduction and he's an orb booster, but he's basically never used because they're just better units that you could really use on your team. But if you're inflicted with the stun debuff, this could potentially be a unit that might help you out. But a lot of these characters are just pretty much unusable. I mean, this Alvida is an orb booster, rainbow orb booster, I believe, and also damage reducer. So again, you might find a place for it. Same with Apu. He's an attack booster for, I think it's free spirit and shooter characters, but like outside of that, like there's just better units you could be using. But it's kind of interesting going back and seeing all these old school Colosseum characters. I mean, Kid has an interesting effect to like empty slots and deal damage, but again, it's never really used. But it is crazy to go through all of these old school characters, and yeah, a lot of these characters are just ridiculously bad, honestly. Jozu is actually okay. He's kind of niche, I would say. Jozu's an interesting character because he has like an ability to start the quest off with really low cooldown, and he has good wave clearing. So I guess if you use like Zorodro, for example, Elizabello, those types of wave clearing specials, Jozu's one of those types of units. But unfortunately, a lot of these characters are just pretty bad. This guy's an attack booster for strength and int, I want to say, so he's, I guess, usable in a way, but basically never used. Those characters are bad. Moria is interesting, but basically never used. Foxy is bad. These characters are bad. Brindy World is also kind of okay. He's kind of like a never used character because he's an attack booster for shooter characters, and before his release, like, there really wasn't much going on for shooters. He kind of helped out a little bit, but it's still not the best unit in the game, but it was something for the shooter characters at the time. Still, all these characters are bad. Kinimon, though, is pretty good. Kinimon, I do use him sometimes. He's a character that just enables you to get cooldown reduction. He has double special activation, so he's got a really low cooldown. I think it's like 5-turn cooldown, double special activation, and reduces cooldowns of slasher and free spirit characters. I don't think he has a sailor effect that resists special reverse, but if he did, this unit would be honestly one of the best Colosseum units in the game. But still, he's like not really used that much, but he's like okay-ish. These guys are bad. Kanjuro is pretty bad. No, like, it's so bad. So many of these units are terrible. This guy's basically never used. He's a color affinity booster for shooter, I want to say. This guy's bad. You're pretty bad. Gin was interesting. Kuro's bad. You're bad. You're bad. Oh my god, I didn't actually realize how many of these units are just outright terrible, dude. These characters are bad. These characters are bad. Shiryu we can actually talk about. So for Colosseum Shiryu, I think he's actually a pretty good unit. He has an ability to remove poison. He does damage reduction for a few turns, and he also has the ability to just kill like really low HP characters. He's kind of like a niche use. You don't use him all the time, but has a pretty interesting set of skills. You're bad, you're pretty bad, you're bad. Kyros is interesting. He's kind of like never used, but back in the day, he was kind of nice for like Hody speed farm teams, but not that useful. You're pretty bad, but Cat Viper is actually pretty good. Cat Viper, I would say, is like probably like a great unit, honestly. The fact that it has the ability to give you a full border matching slots and an attack boost for 2 separate classes, and those matching slots go through block orbs as well. It is dependent on the enemy having a certain immunity buff, but it's still a pretty good unit across the board. Definitely a really solid Colosseum unit that can still see some play in 2021, but like not an amazing unit. We got Lucy here as well. It's gonna be hard to like drag all these units around, but Lucy's basically a sometimes used character, has really weird orb manipulation, orb boost to I think it's strength X quick, but like not an amazing unit. Obviously when Legend Lucy came out, this unit was great, but outside of that, not that much. Sicilian's pretty interesting. He's an attack booster for int, probably like between niche or sometimes probably like a niche use, because there are better int attack boosters in the game, and you know this guy's not too bad for like super type Katakuri for reducing your health, but there are better units you could use to do that. Not an amazing unit. I think Riser is pretty bad, honestly, like just a terrible unit. We got the Neo units. I'm not going to talk about the Neo units because they're pretty similar to their original counterparts, but better and worse in some ways. We got COLISEUM Enel. Dude, COLISEUM Enel is fantastic. Still sees a lot of play. I would say he is a must max COLISEUM character. Really freaking good, dude. Amazing utility, and if your captain is a driven unit, you get a chain boost on top of that, which is pretty cool. We got the Neo Killer. We got Pedro, actually. Pedro's pretty good. I'd say he's like a sometimes used character. Color affinity for Cerebral, health reducer, which is good and bad depending on the team composition. When Cerebral were in their heyday, a lot of the good Cerebral units were very dependent on being at low HP, which Pedro was really good for. However, as you know, Cerebral became one of the better classes in the game, they kind of strayed away from being at low HP, so it made Pedro a little bit less useful to run, but still a pretty decent unit for color affinity at least. Drake, Neo Drake. We got Rayleigh. Rayleigh's actually pretty good. He's like a sometimes used unit. He gives you, he gives you matching slots and some utility. Like he doesn't actually give you a boost of any kind, but just, you know, pretty decent utility and stuff. Good for free spirit teams. You're bad. You're like never used basically. You're like around here. Like this Jesus Burgess isn't super useful, unfortunately. Kid, obviously, you know, goes without saying. Kid's a pretty interesting unit, but I'd say in today's day and age, he isn't as good as what he once was, just because of the fact that there's like so many other ways that you can like use effects like this, and you know, wave clearing stages like that isn't as useful anymore. You know, there aren't fortnights that are out every couple of weeks that give you really annoying pain to just get through, where you could just use this COLISEUM Kid to wave clear. There's not really too much content that's like that these days where this character is as useful for. So this guy, you know, used to be one of the best COLISEUM units in the game, but as time has progressed, he's not as useful anymore, unfortunately. Neptune is ridiculously good, dude. If you have the opportunity to max him, definitely do it. Like, Neptune is ridiculously good. Good for Cerebral and Powerhouse teams. His Neo version is just as good, if not better, honestly. This character is great. Great utility as well. Sees, like, heaps of play. Like, this is probably the best COLISEUM unit, honestly. I mean, we'll have to see what else we got here, but he's ridiculously good. Opera is not that good, but he's got a good support. So, for his support alone, I kind of want to put him as a great unit because he's a free-to-play unit despite removing support, which is really good. But he only attaches to a fighter character, and I think that fighter character has to do a damage dealing special. So it's a little bit niche, but it's a despair removing support effect, which is good, okay? Kumar, unfortunately, is not as good. He's kind of like a niche user now. He removes some defensive effects off the enemy. Slight orb manipulation, nothing too good. This guy's pretty bad, this guy, but he's kind of like never used. He has an ability where he like does damage through barriers, which sometimes comes up for speed farming, but outside of that, not very good. Niwatore is bad. You've got Oven, who's okay, actually. He's kind of like a niche use. I'd say he's almost a sometimes used character. He enables you to get a full board of slots and an orb boost for multiple turns for your strength dex and quick team. Very, very interesting unit. Magellan, though. Magellan. We're talking about good units. Magellan is definitely a must max. I mean, self-procking, poison conditional, a little bit of utility added on top of that. He's got great classes, great color. Magellan is just a really, really good COLISEUM unit, dude. And if you're able to inflict the poison to the enemy, obviously gets around resilience as well. So he has got some nice things going for him. Smoothie's pretty good too, you know, color affinity to Slasher and Powerhouse. I'd say, you know, Smoothie's like a sometimes used character. Sometimes you just need that little bit of a boost. So that's kind of nice that you get access to that. Pika is pretty bad. He's kind of like a niche use because he does do captain swapping, which sometimes is useful, but it's just not that good. This character doesn't really do much because when he captain swaps, he doesn't like do anything. Like he's only boosting himself, I believe, with his captain effect, which is like really, really bad. You got this guy, Katakuri. He's okay, but like he's like a niche use. He gives you like beneficial slots for multiple turns, which sometimes you can use in a utility effect. And if there's 4 more characters, you can get a guaranteed delay, which is kind of cool, but like nothing great. He's bad. You're the Neo version. You're the Neo version. Dopey and Treble. Now, if you're like running predominantly free-to-play characters, this guy is actually like really good. Good switch effect. good special ability. Captain ability is obviously really bad. It goes without saying for a lot of these characters. But yeah, still a pretty solid unit that sees a lot of play in a lot of different teams. And as I said, if you're running predominantly free-to-play characters, this is going to be a character you want to try and get maxed as soon as you possibly can. Really solid. Morley is super good, dude. I think he's probably a great unit. You could probably say he's like a must-max unit. He, self-proccing conditional for multiple stages, actually, which is good. He removes Threshold, he removes Resilience. He only gives you the conditional boost, I think, or the defense down, I think, if your captain is Free Spirit. So that's the only downside, but if you can build it for it, it's pretty good. Morley's a fantastic unit to have. Jinbe's also really good. Obviously, you can see, the lower we get, the better these units are. So Jinbe, I would put in like a great unit tier because he actually is one of the only units in the game that can just outright remove all turns of damage threshold. I think your captain has to be a fighter or cerebral, I think, or is that always active? I can't remember exactly what he does, but I know he definitely does that. He removes all resilience on the enemy, and he does like some other thing. He does like a chain boost or something. But yeah, he's a really solid unit, this Jinbe. We got Law, Stampede Law. He's like okay. He's probably like a sometimes used character. Attack boost for Slasher and Cerebral. Gets rid of Special Bind only by 4 turns though. And if you're below 50%, I think he heals you. So he's interesting. Hody Jones is so good, dude. Hody Jones is must max. Good utility. He's a striker powerhouse unit. Fits well with Kaido, of course. I mean, any character that fits well with Kaido is going to be good in some way, shape, or form, right? Has to be. So Hody Jones is great. Just his utility alone. Special Bind, Despair, I think it is. He does a health cut as well. Really good unit. We've got Oars, who is pretty niche. He's just like, if you're running a full team of fighters, you can do some really interesting things with that. But just most of the time, he's just going to be like a slight little bit of utility. It's nothing too crazy. Kyoshiro is pretty meh. He doesn't really have a lot going for him. If you have like some certain slots on your team, he can do some interesting stuff. He's a damage reducer and like a chain booster. Like, it's nothing too useful. Shutenmara is pretty good. Special bind removal. He's got an attack boost for Slasher and Powerhouse. Like, he's okay. He'll see some play sometimes. But, if you've got better boosters, most of the time you use those instead. Singuro is pretty similar to that. He's got an ability to resist special reverse, and he reduces cooldowns of your characters. So you can get around that. His color affinity, his health boost, his beneficial slots. Pretty interesting unit, honestly. Komarosaki is also really good. Like, a lot of these characters we're coming up against is really good. I'm going to put Komarosaki in this tier, though. Double special activation for great utility. Adjacent slots matching as well. Really strong unit, actually. I'm a big fan of the COLISEUM Komarosaki. Used her a lot in previous GARP challenges, too. Very solid unit. Dogstorm is a character that I would honestly suggest to max. There's been so many situations where I've been building for teams, and this character alone, he does like Despair removal, Threshold removal, he does one of the chain debuffs he removes, and he is a 2x attack booster to Strength and Psi. Really solid kit, dude, going on here. I don't remember his Sailor effects. I know his Captain effect is something to do with, like, Strength and Psi as well. But it's a Dogstorm character. He has access to some of the good Cat Viper subs. Supports is what I mean. Just a super solid kit. Definitely max him out. We got Kizaru. Kizaru I've used sometimes. He gives cooldown to only 1 unit. He has beneficial slots. He's an orb booster. He's okay. I wish the cooldown was for all characters rather than just select 1 unit and they get cooldown. Would have been a lot better if he was, but still a pretty okay unit that we'll see some play. We've got King, who unfortunately does not see that much play. And the main reason for it is because decks are just so bad, because your captain has to be a dex unit in order for him to get his conditional boost to activate, and he is a self-proccing delayed conditional boost. And that's also a little bit of a problem, because delayed conditional boosts are one of the least useful ones, because delay immunity is relatively common, so that's a little bit unfortunate for him. But he's a really good unit though. If you get the opportunity to do it, I would max him out because he's kind of nice. We've got the Neo Kobe, which we won't worry about. Gokimara is also like a sometimes used character. He just doesn't remove a lot of debuffs. Like, he does a couple of things, but it's only by 4 turns, where 5 turns would have made this character like absolutely godly. So that's a little unfortunate that he doesn't do as many as what we would have hoped. Orochi I used a lot in the previous treasure map that just happened, but unfortunately he's like a sometimes used character as well. He just doesn't really see that much play. He does a lot of cool things, but he's not super useful. Like, he's not one of the ones you should definitely max out. And then we've got Okiku here. Okiku's actually pretty good. I don't know if I would say it's a must max, but I've used Okiku a lot recently. Pretty decent utility going on, and orb boosting for your team as well, which is kind of cool. But, you know, there's plenty of other orb boosters you could use. But there is a little bit of good utility going on there. I think it's bind and rainbow shield removal. I think it's both by 5 turns, which is really good, actually. And then our last unit is page 1, which is, again, another sometimes used character. If you've got better chain lockers, you'll probably just use them instead. Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I want to put Okiku in the top tier. I think these characters are definitely the Colosseum units that I personally use the most. And then I've got this Okiku, I think, is probably one of the best ones here as well. This one could almost go into must max too. And then these ones here are characters that, you know, I use them sometimes. And again, these ones I also use sometimes. But on paper, they're very, very good units that should probably get maxed out no matter what. Definitely these first 3 tiers, get these ones maxed. But we're not done yet. We need to talk about the arena characters as well, okay? Now, honestly, I don't think any of these are like completely 100% max out, aside from probably Bonkichi, because he's a very flexible unit that can give you different conditional boosts depending on how many enemies are available on the field. I think that's how it works. He can do a delay conditional, or he can do a defense down conditional, which is pretty awesome that a character has access to that. He's got a pretty interesting support going on as well. And he's a Bonkichi, he's a Brook unit, he's got access to pretty good supports as well. So Bonkichi has a lot going for him. And then I'd say Kamazo is also like a great unit because, once again, it's a dex unit that's an orb booster, which we have too many of, but he does health reduction as well, and he's an orb booster that can last up to 2 turns. Does he do orb manipulation as well? I don't think he does orb manipulation, but he has a little bit of utility too. He always like burn and stuff. But yeah, Kamazo's okay. He got a really good support as well. A lot of these arena units, I like that they have good supports. That definitely makes him a little bit more valuable to max out. So yeah, he's okay. I'd probably leave him in the great units here because yeah, he has some pretty cool stuff going on. Now, unfortunately, I do think that this Frankie is not that good. His special ability is pretty average. One thing that really saves him though, he's got a fantastic support ability that removes attack down, attaches to some of those Straw Hat characters. So that's really useful that he has that. But I mean, outside of his support, I personally don't really see myself using his special that much. We've got X Drake as well, which is another unit that is probably like a sometimes tier because his special is based around how many characters of a certain color on your team. So if you build your team in a certain way, X-Drake can be phenomenal, but again, it's really, really dependent on the rest of the characters on your crew, which can really screw up his abilities, unfortunately. And then you've got this guy, Kawamatsu, who I think is also another great unit because he's got some okay utility, but unfortunately, it's not like a 5-turn removal. It's like only 3-turn removal, and he's an attack booster and an orb booster over multiple different turns for Slasher and Free Spirit. A great support unit attaching to Odin, which Odin didn't have a lot of good support units moving forward, so it's nice to get access to a character like this. So I think this is probably where I'd rank the arena units. I definitely think Brook is the most valuable one, at least from what I've seen thus far. But these units are all pretty useful to have, and of course more will be coming in the future. So that's pretty much the rundown that we have right now for these arena and Colosseum characters. So hopefully you learned something in this video, guys, as to what characters you should be focusing in on for the next, little bit moving forward, and focusing in on these characters, making sure they get maxed out so that, you'll be able to build even better teams that you have been previously. So make sure to go ahead and get these characters maxed out. Remember, a lot of these Colosseum units are available via the Recollection Archive, so great opportunity to get them done. And hopefully these arena units will make their way to the Recollection Archive at some point as well to go ahead and max them out if you did miss them. But hopefully you guys learned something, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this video today. And if you guys did enjoy it, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content that I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. But other than that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.